Alright guys, welcome back to another video in Spring Boot series. In this video I want to talk about how can we add different validation on our video object. So until now we are validating our video object inside the service. So if you look at the post mapping, when the video object comes in, we call video service.save to db, and inside save to db we have a isValid method that is validating if a title is null or a description is null, right? If it is null, then we return false and don't add that. But that's good, right? That's good for this particular validation, but we cannot validate like every other scenario by creating our own method. For example, if we have to validate on the size of the title, right? That title cannot be larger than 50 letters, right? Similar description cannot be larger than 100 letters, right? So there can be validation on the size. There can be validation of the on the if video and title are empty or not, right? There can be different varieties of validation, right? And down the road, when we'll increase more properties, when we add more properties on video object, we're going to add validation on those new properties as well, right? So it's not a practically it's not a great idea to keep creating your isValid method as because it's not scalable, right? So what we can do, right? um, in Spring, there is a validation um jar, a validation library for us in our disposal, which we can use, and that validation library provides us different validation annotation that we can use out of the box, and that basically does all that logic inside it, so we don't need to write a custom logic by ourselves, right? So let's take a look how can we do that, right? So I'll start with going inside pom.xml and first add that library. It's going to be added in a similar way. We'll add dependency tag first, and I think it's called Spring Boot starter. It's validation. Yep, the first one, and it's coming from Spring Framework.boot. That's it. I'm going to choose that, and then we'll go inside a video object, right? So that's where we want to add the validation. So for example, if we want to validate the title, we want to add that annotation on top of it, just like we did for ID, right? I mean, we didn't add it validation for ID, but we had like two annotation here. So similarly, we'll add a valid annotation for the title. So let's say we want title to be not empty, right? So there is annotation called not blank. So not blank annotation said that this particular field cannot be empty. So when a post request is coming in, if title is empty, the Spring is going to take care of that and going to throw a certain exception, and we'll see that in a minute, right? Similarly, let's just keep it like that, and we don't do anything else. Okay, now let's go back to video service, and let's remove this isValid logic, right? Because we don't want our custom logic anymore. So what I'm gonna do, I'm going to just comment out this entire thing. So when a video object is coming in, I'm just calling video repository dot save, and I'm just saving that video object, right? And then I'm just returning true for now, right? So I'm not validating anymore like I was doing before, and I'm just trusting Spring validation to take care of validation for me. Alright, so that's good. Service is good. Let's go to controller. So right here, video object is coming in. So let's see what happens right now. Let me restart the service. Service is getting restarted, and now I'm going to go to Postman and do a post request on videos. Let's go here. So now we have a post request at the top. We have a title and description. This looks a valid request. Let's send that. 201 created. That's good. Now let's exclude title from here, and that should be an invalid request because we have a not blank annotation now. So you can see at the bottom it says internal server error, right? So our server is not able to understand this request, right? And if you remember, we also don't have our custom logic anymore. So right now this guy is taking care of validating the title, saying I didn't find the title in the incoming video object, so I'm just going to throw an error, right? This is better than before, but I think the not so good part is we are throwing 500 error, 500 status code back. Whenever we see 500 status code, that tells us that it's a server error, right? So instead of telling it's a server error, we should rather tell the client that it's a client error, because the client is sending us the wrong object, right? So how can we do that? It's very easy to do. We just need to add annotation in the post mapping. So I'm going to video controller.java. In the post mapping method, I'm going to write @valid. So when @valid, as soon as I add that, Spring framework before calling the video service is going to validate this incoming object first. So if it is not valid, it's just going to return right away instead of calling service and then let service call the repository. Spring framework is going to validate it right away and going to tell the client that it's your error, it's not mine, right? So let's see what happens after I add that. I'm going to stop and rerun just like before, and server is coming back up. We'll go here. Now let's add a valid object first. It should be added just fine. 201 created, that's fine. Now remove the title again. Now if you remember, we had 500 status code before, and we should see something different now. So I'm gonna hit send. So we can see 400 bad requests. You can see 400 bad requests here. Now this is better than before, way better than before, because now we are telling it's a 400 status code. That's a hint for the client that they did something wrong, right? So we are saying it's a bad request, you didn't give us a bad, good request to process. So very simple, we just added two annotation @valid here, and not blank annotation here, right? So just we're going to follow the same pattern for validating other fields as well. For example, this for description, we can say, yeah, we don't want it blank as well. So, and let's say we can say we want size of description maximum, let's say 20 characters, right? And whenever it's going to be more than 20, we're going to throw an exception, right? We're going to return back. So I'm going to restart, and now we are going to play with description. Stop and rerun. I don't need to add anything inside that, because I'm already have a valid in front of the entire object. So let's go here, let's add a valid object. It should go through, and it went through just fine. Right now for title, let's say let's make it more than 20, right? So Spring Boot get request video demo, maybe it's more than 20. Let's see. So right now it's more than 20, right? I mean, we can count. I think it's 5, 4, 9, 10. It's more than 20, right? So let's keep removing that, and let's send it again, and it got created successfully. Just let's call get request to validate our objects. Let's call it internal server error. Looks like something is wrong in the server. So I'm going to look into the terminal and see what happened. Okay, it says no default constructor for video. So let's add a default constructor. I think it got removed accidentally. So we'll add a default constructor, restart our service, and the service comes back up. We're going to add two objects. Let's say one is chapter 1, then another is chapter 2, and both are validated already. And now we'll call that, and we see chapter 1, chapter 2. And now I'll try adding something bad. Well, first of all, without title it won't work, and now trying something bad, this won't work either, right? And now if you go to get, we see only two objects, right? So basically we have seen that there we can add two objects and we can validate both of them before adding them into our database, right? Without writing our own custom logic. Alright guys, so that's it for this video. Stay tuned for more videos like this. Thank you.